How do I get my investors to make referrals? Now, this is a little bit of a trick question, and let me give you a little bit of context here. What this person asking this question was referring to is, how do I get investors to refer me to other investors who will also put money in my deal? But this person was really talking about lenders, private money lenders, hard money lenders, not necessarily the passive investors that I typically talk about. So we'll talk about both. First of all, any kind of referral means you have to do a good job. You got to be professional. You have to do all the things that make somebody satisfied with your relationship, or referrals are not going to come. That's just a gimme. That's kind of the ante in poker. So make sure you are hitting the baseline there. In order to get people to give you referrals, first understand what happens. The securities laws say that people can't go out and blast their list and start cold calling friends and then take referral fees for doing this. But what frequently happens is that a couple people will be playing golf, and one person will say to another person, "Hey, what are you doing with your money, your leftover money these days?" Well, I got a lot of it, over there at the big brokerage house, the big Merrill Lynch, or whatever brokerage house, wirehouse. But then I just put a bunch of money with this other guy, Fred. Oh, really? What are you doing? Well, the guy buys apartment buildings. He builds things. He does whatever. And, I've been with him a couple of years, and we're making, some pretty good amount of money. And so what'll happen is that the guy will say, well, gee, you think I'd get involved in something like that? There wasn't a direct solicitation, but, they kind of put a little feather out there, and the guy grabbed it. So he just took it and said, hey, you know what? I'd kind of like to learn about this. I'd like to meet this guy. Can I do that? And the more investors that you have, the more likely that is. There's a certain momentum effect. So the more of these people you have, the more likely they are to have conversations on golf courses and in other places, and the more likely you are to get some referrals. So the bigger your sphere becomes, the more likely you are to start having that kind of success. Before that happens, though, there are things that you can do. You can stimulate the pot. You can ask people for introductions or referrals. Now, remember, a lot of people aren't going to give you referrals until they have some relationship with you, or until they see how you perform. So don't meet a new investor, catch their money, and then immediately start asking for referrals. That's what a lot of salespeople do. I think that's kind of a lower end sales technique. We need to operate at a high level and give people confidence that we know what we're doing. We don't want to appear hungry. We don't want to appear desperate. And so you need to let these investors season just a little bit, because they need to see how you're doing. But after 6 months or a year, you're sending out checks. We typically talk about sending out preferred payment checks and profit distribution checks quarterly. But some people, especially people who run lending funds, will pay their investors on a monthly basis. And the reason is they want those investors seeing those checks all the time. And then they can go back to those people earlier and say, listen, how are we doing? Oh, you guys are doing just great. Great. Can you introduce us to any of your friends? Is there anybody maybe, we could talk to? And that's really what it is. So if you've given them a couple of checks in 6 months, that's pretty good. If you've given them 6 checks in 6 months, that might be even better. So that's a reason to think about your payout strategy for your distributions, your preferred payments, and so forth. The situation that this guy this morning wrote in about was really something a little different. What he asked about was, I have hard money lenders, and I asked them for referrals, and they don't want to share their deals because they're afraid that if they introduce me to another hard money lender, that I won't come to them. I'll go to the other guy instead, that the other guy will have better pricing. Are these passive investors that come into LLCs the way that we talk about it, is it the same thing? Are they competitive with each other? And the answer is no, they're not. And here's why. A hard money lender, of course, is going to be reluctant to introduce you to another hard money lender. Why? Because they both loan money for a price. They're both in business to make loans. And so if you start moving your business to somebody else, then the first guy that made the referral would be hindered by that. So that doesn't always work out. But here's what happens in an LLC environment, the way that we operate in a syndication or a fund. There's no competition between investors. We're going to slice up this loaf of bread into a certain number of slices. And if somebody wants to buy 3 of them, they buy 3 at $25,000 a piece. If they want 10 of them, then they buy 10 at $25,000 a piece. And whatever amount of money you have, you buy the number of slices that you want. You buy just those numbers of shares, and that's what you buy. So 5 guys can all come in. They're all partners in every part of every deal. And so there's no competition. They all share pro rata based on how much money they put in and how many shares they bought. So there's no competition at all. There's no difficulty. That makes it much easier to get referrals from people because you don't have that competitive element, and it just works out so much better. So how do you get referrals? Do a great job, set up systems that are going to work, set up your payment structures in a way that are going to work, and go out and ask people at the right time for that kind of assistance, or build your network big enough that it starts happening all by itself. And once that starts happening, you'll really recognize what a great business this is, as long as you go out and stake your claim.